So the way I do videos usually is very unscripted, especially nowadays, where I kind of just go with the flow, hit record, and we'll just say my thoughts on a certain topic. And that's what I did for Twisted Wonderland is I basically just turned on my webcam, pulled up OBS, and I recorded, I think it was like a 20-minute video on my thoughts as someone who is completely new to Twisted Wonderland and sort of the lore behind the games and the books coming into this anime blind. And you guys seem to like it a lot. So we're back for episode 2. What also helps is that Disney Plus is releasing this weekly. And I was expecting to make one video on Twisted Wonderland because I thought they were going to drop the whole season at once, not realizing it was a weekly release. So hey, that means more content for me, right? But welcome back, everyone who was a part of my first video. If you weren't, you can check on my channel. It should still be up, my initial thoughts on episode 1. But this is primarily going to be about episode 2, now that we're getting sort of more of an idea of what this anime is going to look like, especially since a lot of people are nervous since it is sort of a bigger property that Disney is now giving a lot more coverage, a lot more like a lot more exposure. That's the word, especially to mainstream audiences by putting it on Disney Plus and Hulu and showcasing it. And also, I do apologize for my last video. I said the dude behind Black Butler, it's the woman behind Black Butler. Quick correction there. But I still very much see elements of the Black Butler anime, and especially with the art style itself within Twisted Wonderland, especially when it comes to character designs. This has been sort of the thing that's been keeping me invested in the story, is seeing the unique designs of, you know, these students who are part of these houses that are directly related to a certain Disney villain. So they have a total of 7. I'm going to say them real quick. Hopefully, I'll get used to which Disney villains are within Twisted Wonderland, but I think it's just going to take some time. So I know the big one is Queen of Hearts. And I'm already getting a hint that this season primarily will be focusing on the dorm and the students that belong to Queen of Hearts. We already get that with the introduction of Ace and Deuce, who, I mean, it's the average male experience of like, you're just walking on campus, you run into 2 random people, and then you instantly hit it off and become friends. And that's basically what it's giving me. It's also giving me a lot of familiar feeling with how Harry Potter was, especially in the early books, where, you know, you have the 3 troublemakers, something goes wrong, and they're all roped into this unusual adventure or side quest. And you definitely do get that at the end of episode 1. Especially with, and let me just start, this is all spoilers for episode 2, them, you know, torching the statue of the Queen of Hearts. And of course, it was the Tanuki's doing, but because they were all involved, you know, the headmaster comes along and it's like, yeah, you guys are in big trouble. You guys have to now do this in order to stay in the school. So it adds a little bit of stakes. And I love it because it's also the character development. It's also showing character interactions. I really appreciate too. Let me just say before we move on from the characters. I love Ace and Deuce as a character because they are completely different from one another. They actually feel like actual students who are people. And one thing I do have problems with when it comes to stories like this is you have, of course, I mean, it's tropes, but like the high school trope of, or high society trope of, they're all above the main character who is a commoner or a foreigner. And in this case, in Twisted Wonderland, it's the isekai recipient, right? So you have them, they could be like talking down to him and making fun of him. And then, you know, as the story progresses, maybe they become friends. That's a common trope. But what I do like here is Ace is very much the rambunctious kind of, he's almost a troublemaker too, in a sense, not as much as Tanuki, but he does elevate the situation where they accidentally destroy the Queen of Hearts because they're using magic. But I like how Deuce is very much the rational type of person, to the point where he's able to give them that second chase of going into the mind and fighting the Magistone, right? for the lamps. And I just like that because it could have been like they're both like, oh, talking down to well, it's Yukin, right? Yukin, the main character, right? So they could definitely be talking down to Yukin and being like, yeah, you don't belong here, you don't have magic. But just the idea of everyone's already friendly in this world, which is funny because it's a world ruled by villains in a sense. Like they have statues of these iconic Disney villains, yet the students are surprisingly okay with letting everyone like they don't have any ill will towards Yukin. They're like, oh, this is kind of like a funny situation. I feel like that it should be talked about a little bit more because I don't know. I just feel like you get a lot of stories that show the opposite, where to create this external conflict, you already are alienated. But I just like the fact that they seem like actual students and like actual people. Like you don't hate a person automatically unless they do something really bad to you, like your first impressions, which we'll get into the leader of the dorm in a bit. Like Riddle, right? Riddle, that is the situation with Riddle. But the other students, I do appreciate how they very much have their own thoughts, they have their own inspirations, and they act very differently to situations. It's a little thing, but as someone who's going in blind and people will I already have a feeling people are gonna accuse the show of being generic just based on the animation, which we'll get into a little bit later. I do think there are things like this that bring up the show that have an amount of quality, whether it's the writing for the characters or the situations that unfold, the art design of the world, especially the style. I think that is definitely something that I'm noticing, especially in episode 2, that is very much in the forefront. And also, I do like seeing them pull from Disney animation and actually seeing clips from The Lion King, seeing clips from The Little Mermaid and Alice in Wonderland. Like all these old, wow, old, right? All these movies, like these classic Disney movies, right? You get to see them sort of being the center of this world. And I do appreciate that they're not shying away from it, especially now that it's being produced by Disney. So they are able to, right? Without fear of copyright, because they own it, right? They own it. So I like I said, I like the interactions. Tanuki's a little bit annoying, but it also reminds me of this is a trope of, you have that little rascal type, like a summon or like a partner. And what I will say before anyone complains about Tanuki being annoying, if you are going in blind like me, give it a chance, because Tanuki, and I've already seen it in episode 2, where they have a really good moment between Tanuki and Yukin, where Tanuki's aspiring to be this legendary magician, this legendary wizard, but can't because he was never accepted into Night Raven Academy, right? Or Night Raven College. So I like how they have this little back and forth, and it reminds Yukin about his teammate, in the Kendo club, and how Tanuki's almost the same, where they both have aspirations. They just can't really achieve it because they aren't given the means to become greater. So I could definitely see later episodes delving into their relationship, and you may find him annoying now, but I also feel like Tanuki will grow on you. That's what the character is giving me, especially because he's a little bit of a troublemaker, but especially with the troublemaking types, most of the time they are actually misunderstood. And when you finally understand where they're coming from, like episode 2 did give us a glimpse into sort of what he wants to be, you can lead to some great character development. So that is really cool. We also got sort of the highlight of the different houses by going through the statues. I like the statues as a landmark because it visualizes sort of what each house/faction is within Twisted Wonderland. And you have the 7 primary villains. You have the Queen of Hearts, you have Hades, you have Scar, Maleficent, Evil Queen, Ursula, and shoot, I'm missing one more. I'm missing one more, and it's gonna kill me. But yes, it's all of the 7 villains here. Um, I'm trying to look it up right now. We'll figure it out later. But anyways, I just like seeing the statues because you can go back to it, and if they are walking around on campus, and this is like my big thing with world building. If you have a world that shows repetition, whether it's like a familiar building, like the school building, you have the statues at courtyard with the villains. If you have like a garden or a mine that they return to, or even yet the character, like he even says, like Yuken says, oh, this is a house with lots of character, right? Which is the dorm that he's staying at with the 3 ghosts, which is a good reference, a good Disney reference. But just if you show these iconic locations and show them repeatedly returning to these locations, it builds this world. And it's actually fantastic because you'll look back on it and you'll be like, oh, this feels like a world I can explore. And some of the best stories I've seen do this a lot. And like the big ones like Danganronpa, but another one that I feel like is very underrated that a lot of people that I feel like a lot of people overlook, but I feel like it's very similar to at least this story, the way it's presenting itself, is Welcome to the Demon School Iruma-kun. I have said this on my channel before. It is honestly one of my all-time favorite shows because it knows what it is. It's very wholesome and it's all good vibes. So that's what Twisted Wonderland to me is shaping up to be, especially with the school setting, is showing these familiar characters, showing these familiar settings, but really capitalizing on character development and character growth, and that's what will keep you invested in the story. So yeah, so let's get into, I think the biggest thing I want to refer to is it worth your time? That's a tough question to answer, I'm afraid to say, because as much as I am an avid anime fan, I have seen my fair share of, just shonen male-centric shows, like popular shonen, like I've seen Demon Slayer, My Hero Academia, Bleach, Attack on Titan, any big show, name it, Naruto, I've seen it. I've also seen a lot more of the shonen that is less popular. I've seen almost every single isekai that's come out. So I am an isekai junkie for sure. I have seen a lot of the villainous, which is actually my new favorite type of subgenre, is the villainous anime coming out, where it's like, oh, I've been reborn as a villainous, let's try and avoid it. So yeah, I've also seen a lot of slice of lives. I've seen a lot of horror / drama / psychological horror, So I've basically seen everything under the moon when it comes to anime, because anime is a medium and I wanted to explore as much as I could, especially when there's so many different genres to pick from, right? So I have an understanding of anime that I feel like a lot of people, and this is why I added this disclaimer, I have an understanding of anime that I feel like a lot of people who haven't seen too many shows outside of the popular shows are gonna realize with Twisted Wonderland. And I recognize it because I know the backstory of the animation studio. But a lot of people are already gonna clown on this anime, I feel, because of the animation. And the animation is probably the biggest weakness for this show getting greenlit for future seasons. I don't mind it because there are times where, yes, it is very stilted. Yes, it is very slideshow-like. But then when there's an action sequence, sometimes it'll look really good and really clean. And people like to make the joke like the budget is spent on this fight scene, but then the rest of the dialogue scenes is very stilted, right? Yeah, that is gonna be very much this show, I feel. And it's gonna push away a lot of people, especially people who are like, oh, everything needs to be Demon Slayer levels of quality, or the new Chainsaw Man movie, right? Everything needs to be Chainsaw Man. Like, everyone imagines every animation studio and anime needs to be something made from like Mappa or Ufotable, right? Like levels of quality, or else it's a bad show. And I'm like, that's yes and no. Yes and no. because yes, animation is a huge component of anime. Like anime is animation in Japanese, right? Like that's what you go for. But I also feel like there's a lot of other merits to an anime that I think a lot of people overlook, especially when it comes to writing, when it comes to character development, world building, character design. And I feel like in these other sectors, this is where Twisted Wonderland shines to me. And I mentioned it before, like I'm already liking how the characters are already feeling unique. You know, Riddle is he's an interesting character. He is. But we'll see what his relationship with Yukin ends up being. I like the idea of he tries to return home. They open those options. Like, why doesn't he just try and go home? Well, he can't because his world doesn't exist. It was an error. Well, he doesn't have magic. Okay, so he can't really do too much. So he doesn't belong to a certain house. But by not belonging to a certain house, that means he's able to interact with Seven all equally. And of course, this one is focusing on the Queen of Hearts faction. But, you know, maybe in future seasons, you'll explore, you know, Scar's faction, Ursula's faction, Maleficent's faction. You know, there's so many different ways you can go about it. Oh, Jafar. Jafar was the seventh one I was forgetting. But yeah, so like already they're setting up this amazing premise and you already have the game and the books to help out. But just seeing this, like, they're definitely taking advantage of, like, look at the intrigue of this world. Look at how these things work. That is going to, what I feel is going to elevate itself to push itself to future, further heights, I will say. And that will mean more seasons and maybe improved quality on the animation. And I've seen this before. It's not impossible. The biggest thing too, and I'll say this too, Record of Ragnarok. If you heard of that anime, it gets made fun of because it is the slideshow anime. It is arguably one of the worst shows out there because of its animation quality. The same studio that did that is unfortunately doing Twisted Wonderland. So that is also something to note. What I will say is this is much better than Record of Ragnarok in terms of the treatment that this show is being given. So I appreciate that. But just give it a grain of salt because as future seasons go, there is a possibility if you follow along and keep invested in the story, say like if you're invested into like watching this and this gets numbers on Disney Plus / Hulu, right? You could see increased budget. Could see a switch in animation studio. So the story and the entire anime will become higher quality in the future. That is definitely not off the table. That is definitely a reality. Because I've also seen the opposite, where you have this amazing animation studio, it switches, and then the anime drops in quality. So it really depends. But I'll just, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I want to say this. Should you watch this anime? If you are a fan of Demon Slayer, if you're a fan of Attack on Titan, or any of these popular shows and aren't used to this type of show, if you are open to giving this a shot, even if the animation isn't the best, isn't up there with some of your favorites, I would still stay for the characters and story. Because to me, that is what's making the show great for me, is I'm already liking a lot of things I'm seeing within the world and lore of Twisted Wonderland. But if you're a type of person who is going to hate on this show because you already don't like the animation, you think the animation is some of the worst you've seen, even though I've seen much, much worse. Trust me, you do not know the depths of hell that I have gone down. Okay, I've been there. You haven't. But if you really think that this animation isn't the best and isn't for you and you're just going to hate on it, don't give it your energy. Don't hate on people who enjoy this show. Just go back to, you know, they're making more Chainsaw Man probably in the future. They're going to make another Demon Slayer movie in the future, right? Just go back to those properties and like let people like what they like. And I think that that's going to sort of boil down my overall thoughts about the show is just, it depends on who you are. But if you're a fan of Twisted Wonderland, if you want to give the show a shot, if you want to see more from the show, give the show your time and energy, because there is stuff beyond just the animation that I think is worth note. And the biggest thing too, is the opening. I think the opening for Twisted Wonderland is fantastic. It brings me into the world. I also have a thing where it's like, if the opening is good, I will listen to it and it will get me even more invested in the show because I will listen to the song on repeat. And this is what Twisted Wonderland's OP is. So, yeah, the opening sequence is fantastic. I'm loving episode 2. And do I think it's better than episode 1? I have to say, they're both around the same for me because it's still introducing you to this world. I do like a lot more the references that episode 2 delves into. But again, I'm going to be like Yukin here, where he sees the house and he sees the ghost and he's like, you know what? This is my situation right now. We may have the studio behind Records of Ragnarok working on this anime. It may not be ideal for fans of Twisted Wonderland. It may not be ideal for anime fans like me who want a higher quality product. But, you know, we'll make do since we appreciate the property. We like the characters. We love the music. There's so many other things going for it. So, you know, let's be like Yukin. We'll just make the most of it, even if we have no magic here. But if anyone with power at Disney or has connections to Disney who can make changes like stuff like this on the show, please give Twisted Wonderland more, I guess, more of a deeper thought in terms of the productions going forward, because you could have such a big hit with this show if you change the animation studio or give the animation studio a bigger budget to do more impressive things, because I've seen you do it before. You have these connections with Star Wars Visions. So why not bring one of those studios to work on Twisted Wonderland for season 2 and season 3? Because if you do something like that, people will be invested in the show and they'll come to it. And like my video just popped off. I talked about Twisted Wonderland and people showed up and I was like blown away by that. So, you know, if you make the effort, to anyone watching, trust me, you'll be rewarded handsomely, right? So that wraps up my thoughts on episode 2. What do you guys think about episode 2 of Twisted Wonderland? Did you have the same problems as me? Did you have different problems? Do you think I was too kind to the show? Was I too harsh on the show? Let me know everything let me know everything in the comments below. Dang, this is my first time doing this. Wow. But yeah, this is pretty much it. I'll do an episode 3 when it comes out. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace.